Support Group, one of Bangalore's most important environmental groups, has been advocating for the rights of the lakes along with the rights and entitlements of socially marginalized people of the city as they perceive lake as urban commons. Started informally in 1996 and registered as a public charitable trust in 1998, ESG's not-for-profit initiatives respond through a variety of actions involving research, education, campaign support, and advocacy. ESG is concerned about decommoning of lakes and hence, through public interest litigation, which is a part of judicial activism, they have played an instrumental role in recommoning initiative. For their important initiatives around the lakes, they have earned recognition and appreciation from the eminent Nobel laureate Elinor Ostrom. In this presentation, let us place the whole story from the horse's mouth. Here we captured two leading members of ESG, Leo Saldana and Vargavi Rao, who will narrate their own experiences of filing PILs against some of the lakes and victories and violations that they have achieved in this journey.
So in 1984, a committee was set up by the government of Karnataka. Ramakrishna Hegde was the chief minister, and it was headed by Lakshman Rao, who was a former administrator of the city, and it made its first effort at identifying what are the steps on protecting these lakes. So this is, I'm talking about 84. 88, the report is given by Lakshman Rao, and Lakshman Rao's report basically says all the lakes are in bad shape. Some of them are encroached, some of them are disused, some of them are dry. So they gave a set of recommendations, which the government accepted in 88, which it did not implement. So in 1995, Lakshman Rao himself files a PIL in the High Court saying, look, I have done everything, but they are not accepting my report. And that 1995 PIL continues to be heard. No action is taken. And meanwhile, a lot of other lakes in the peri-urban area started getting encroached because the city is expanding without planning, or the planning does not take care of wetland ecosystems. All right. So by the 1990s, we were alarmed. One of my first judicial interventions, I started studying lakes in the 80s. So there is a Birdwatchers Field Club of Bangalore, which is a voluntary force. So we had people like Joseph George, Zafar Fateh Ali, who had, Salim Ali was part of that network. So they were all very good scholars also. And we learned from them the importance of wetland ecology, of the importance of what these birds are telling us. And we studied migratory waterfowl. We started documenting it, and we produced reports. It was part of an International Wetland Research Bureau's study. So the wetland idea came out, and in 1989 the report was produced on why lakes have to be protected by the birdwatchers. It was a rational, scientific, ecological exercise. Till then it was all about aesthetics.
Yeah.
Now there was ecology. But in 2000s, we realized as ESG we were set up in 96. Before ESG was set up, I launched a PIL. That was my first PIL before the High Court of Karnataka against something called the National Games Village in Kormangala. There was a lake which was taken to build the National Games Village. So I wrote an article called For 11 Days of Glory. For 11 days of glory, which the National Games is, you're destroying a lake to build a township for just 11 days. Why can't the athletes live in hotels, right? They dismissed that petition. They destroyed that lake, in which we predicted that Kormangala, which is in the east, which was totally unbuilt then. It was an open area. It had been turned into an housing layout by the Bangalore Development Authority. We said that this continues, then you will have a problem that in some future when the area gets built up completely, it will get flooded because you have drained the wetland.
Yeah.
And it was the largest wetland which would lead to Bellandur Lake, which is a very large lake to the east of Bangalore. So he said Bellandur will get flooded. There's a system which operates. Upstream should take care of downstream. Downstream should not be over flooded. There's a lot of big signs to it. All this was explained. Case dismissed. The NGV comes up, National Games Village, and Kormangala gets built up. By 2005, all the wealthiest people have gone and lived in Kormangala. Nandan Nilekan, you name all the people are there in Kormangla, and their houses started getting flooded. So loss of wetlands meant areas which are built up got flooded. So what we predicted in 1995 in the PIL has turned out to be true. But by 2004, the Lake Development Authority, which had been set up as an NGO by the government, started giving them out to private sector. Ebbal was given to Oberois, Nagavara to Lumbini, like that. Lakes were given away, some 25 lakes were given. We started campaigning in 2005. We said, you cannot give away lakes which are protected by the public trust doctrine to private parties for maintenance, because not only are they taking away public commons into private hands, but they are benefiting it by commercialization. And they had gone ahead and put water theme parks, hotels, all sorts of things around the lakes, in and around the lakes. Oberoi, for instance, wanted to put up floating restaurants. So all this was going on.
There was like real estate speculation going on.
It was a financial speculation that was taking place using the commons. So we raised our challenge in 2008 in the PIL after our campaigns were not successful in stopping that. And the court heard that case for 4 years and passed series of interim orders. And when those orders were passed, there were two prayers in our case. One prayer was, you don't have a scheme to protect all the wetlands of Bangalore and Karnataka as a whole. Second was, you cannot privatize the commons by saying the government does not have money. We cited the Ratlam case of Justice Krishna Iyer, for instance, in the Supreme Court, that you cannot use the excuse that the government did not have the money, so it gave to a private party to maintain. So the public trust doctrine cannot be violated, because in 1996 Supreme Court had held up the public trust doctrine anyway. Court heard this matter for 4 years, passed a lot of orders, prevented lakes from being encroached, prevented lakes from being diverted, prevented all sorts of. And finally they gave the Justice Patil, N.K. Patil, who was the sitting judge of the High Court, a direction that he shall constitute a committee, and that committee will go around and study and come up with a set of recommendations, and which was taken as part of the final order on 11th April 2012 and made the guidelines to follow. So there was a case which was going on, filed by Citizen Action Group, and this group had said, because the stormwater drains are encroached and polluted, and so all the water is coming to lakes. That's all. Basically, that is what the prayer was. So you have to remove the encroachments. We intervened in that case in 2019. I, as party in person, and ESG, both of us intervened. And Chief Justice Oak was there as the Chief Justice of Karnataka High Court. He heard us. He had worked on litigation relating to wetlands in Bombay High Court, and he gave a series of excellent orders. And those orders effectively put down the fact that the Act had to be followed, the Justice N.K. Patil report had to be followed, and the third important aspect was in the 2012 order in our lakes case, the court had directed the setting up of District Lake Protection Committee, which had not been set up. He made sure that those committees would be set up. So the future of these lakes is all dependent, unfortunately, on the intent of the public to understand what we are talking, and intent of the government to respond to it. Therefore, what we found is that the senior bureaucracy is not keen on protecting wetlands, nor are the politicians. We find that at the junior levels, at the subordinate judiciary, at the subordinate bureaucracy, at local governments, there is a lot more support. So we have taken one part of the order, which is decentralized governance of lakes, through District Lake Protection Committee, and started working at all districts and building capacities of the District Lake Protection Committee in association with the Karnataka Legal Services Authority.
Let us now hear from Bhargavi Rao, a senior fellow and trustee at Environment Support Group, about the multifarious activities, awareness programs and activisms of ESG towards sensitizing and mobilizing actors and agencies around the restoration of lakes.
So this entire work on the lake started way back in 2002, because it was in 2002 that Bangalore set up the Lake Development Authority, and prior to setting up of the Lake Development Authority, we had seen some of the lakes being rejuvenated by the support of the Norwegian government here in Karnataka. And one such lake which had benefited from such rejuvenation was the Hebbal Lake. So we had seen how it had been rejuvenated, and it was under the forest department at that point of time. And so similarly there were other projects that had happened across Karnataka, and we were familiar with that. So when in 2002 the LDA set up the Lake Development Authority, we were very cautious of why exactly a new body was being set up just to take care of the lakes, because the lakes were already distributed under the forest department, the minor irrigation department, some under the BDA, so on and so forth. But as soon as the LDA was set up, the first thing that LDA did was to privatize 4 lakes. So these were the Hebbal Lake, the Vengainakere Lake, which is in northeast Bangalore, then Nagavara Lake, which is just across the Hebbal Lake in North Bangalore, then also the Agara Lake, which is on Sarjapur Road. So when these 4 lakes were privatized, we went and spoke to the LDA at that point of time, saying that privatization is not good because, first of all, lakes are public commons, right? And the government is only a custodian of it. One cannot lease, rent, sell these common property resources. So, and once you lease it to a private entity, the common man will lose access to it. And being in Bangalore, we know how lakes have been used by a variety of communities. There is the fishing community which gets lease throughout the year. Then there are people who grow lilies. The water lilies, the pink and the lemon yellow color lilies, white lilies, which are used in temples during the festive season, which starts sometime now and goes on till the Dasara time. And then see, our lakes are not supposed to be perennial throughout the year. They are seasonal. Much of South India gets its rain starting now, like May, June is when the rain starts, and we get rain till December. And all this water is collected in these lakes, and then by February it kind of dries up, and that's when some of the local communities grow a variety of crops on the beds of the lake where there is just enough moisture to get that one crop. And they also use it for grazing purposes. So a variety of these livelihoods are dependent on lakes like this. So we said you cannot lease these lakes, and lakes are not meant for typical urban kind of recreational facilities. So when it comes to an urban need, the urban need is mostly recreational purposes, where it is you need to have a boating, and then you need to have some food courts and some amusement, and it becomes like that. So that's when we mobilized the people all around these lakes. The first of the events that we held a candlelight vigil in and around Hebbal Lake. Then we had a human chain around the Agara Lake on Sarjapur Road. We went house to house to all those houses, apartment complexes opposite the lake there, asking them to come down and explaining to them the need as to why lakes should not be privatized. And many people understood the reason. So they understood the fact that lakes serve the purpose beyond boating and recreational and things like that, and they came and joined the human chain formation. And for the human chain formation, we had retired judges who participated. One retired judge by name Sadashiva had participated. The MP, the former MP, Mr. Rajiv Gowda, he had participated in it. Then very eminent personalities like people who are in the Kannada film industry. There was a person called L.V. Sharda, who was a big time actress who had won many national awards. She participated in the human chain formation, and we also had a signature campaign. But despite all of that, the LDA went ahead and signed agreements with all these 4 entities to whom they gave away those 4 lakes. And one of
these 4?
So among the 4 entities who got the lake, Hebbal Lake was given to the Oberoi hotels. Obviously it was, for real estate purpose. The fact that in 2008 the international airport had happened in North Bangalore, having a lake view hotel is a very strategic thing for a big hotel company like that. And Nagavara was given away to another company called Lumbini Gardens, who ran an amusement park. Then Vengayanakere was given again to a private entity who did set up an amusement park there. Agara was given to a firm called Biota, which was actually non-existent. When we served a copy of the petition to them, it came back saying the address doesn't exist. So there were all kinds of frauds that took place in that entire leasing process also. So that's when, even after all this public effort and public voice and public coming out on the roads and saying don't privatize, since LDA went ahead, we were forced to file a public interest litigation. And the public interest litigation was very well researched, drawing examples from across India, across the world, explaining as to why public commons should not be privatized. And the petition went on till 2012, and in 2012 we got an order. But what the court did was, the court set up a committee. The committee was headed by a acting judge at that time, who was Mr. N.K. Patil. So Mr. N.K. Patil, along with the other committee members, they went around the lakes of Bangalore, understanding the challenges of what was happening, why they were being privatized, and what are the pros and cons of such privatization, and the importance of these lakes to local communities. And at the same time, we worked with a wetland specialist called Dr. Subramanya, who also gave us something like a handbook on how a lake has to be rejuvenated, literally with figures and explaining the shallow regions of the lake and the deep regions, what kind of aquatic flora thrive in each of the regions of the lake, and what kind of plants should be planted around the lake. All of that was very beautifully hand drawn by him and given it to us. And it was also submitted to the N.K. Patil committee, and N.K. Patil committee submitted 2 reports to the court. One was the recommendations of what has to be done with respect to lakes, and the second report also explained how a lake has to be rejuvenated. So based on the recommendations of the N.K. Patil committee report, in 2012 the final judgment came on April 11 to 2012, where the court said lakes cannot be privatized, sold, rented, leased. They have to be protected with the help of the local community. Local community has to be involved in it. And then it also ensured that garbage is not dumped, sewage is not diverted into these lakes. And it also mentioned that if there are encroachments, we cannot throw those people out, because they are largely, the poor and the marginalized, who've probably been evicted from somewhere else and they've come and landed here. So if they are being removed, they have to be provided proper housing and proper rehabilitation and resettlement. Only then you can move them out. So those are the broad outcomes, and it also set the buffer zone of the no development zone around these lakes. So those are the broad outcomes of the final judgment in 2012, and since 2012 ESD has been monitoring all the lakes in and around Bangalore, some also around across Karnataka. When people reach out to us, we guide them, we help them document, and whatever violations have taken place, we've brought it to the notice of the High Court. And the High Court has systematically seen it. With clinical precision, the court has seen each of the lakes. If you go to our website, you will see there are some 20 plus memos that have been submitted to the High Court of Karnataka. These were with respect to different lakes. Another interesting part is, at least what drew me to lakes was, we've all been exposed to bird watching from very young. So once you start watching birds and once you start understanding their habitat, when they nest, how they nest, what kind of food do they bring to their young ones, how do they fly, what is the range around which they fly. If you start understanding all of that, you will understand the importance of the lakes.
So within this context, I just want to ask you, for example, we went to the Jakul Lake and Puttanahali Lake yesterday. We visited there and we also talked to the trustee members, and they told us about how through a participatory approach they are now trying to kind of maintain the lakes, because the condition of these lakes are really good, and there are these walkers pathways, etc. But at the same time, they told us that they try to keep these walkers pathways. They don't want to concretize it, and they try to kind of bring in and preserve these heritage elements as much as possible. And we, of course, asked them that whether they are also sensitive to the fishers and other people, like the locals. So they said yes, and they also talked about their very healthy relationship with BBMP. So what is your take on this? These trustees who are mainly members from the residential areas, and then and they are trying to maintain these lakes along with. They said that there is a collaborative model that exists. So what is your take on this?
Yeah, it is. I can say bittersweet in some cases, because see, once we talk about local communities, the local community has to be representative of the neighborhood where the lake is. So in any neighborhood across Bangalore, across Karnataka, across the country, it is not predominantly the elite and those who are living in gated communities. We have a variety of people who live across that neighborhood, right? So these trusts and committees and whatever body we are setting up should be representative of all those people. But what has happened in most of the places where local communities have taken an interest, it's an elite-driven agenda. So if you see the lakes that got rehabilitated, rejuvenated since 2012 after the order came, most were private trusts set up like this from local people. And if you look at the trustees, they are all upper class, upper caste, highly educated, foreign returned, English speaking.
Yes.
So when they set up a trust, and obviously it is easy for them to interact with the government and the various parastatals involved, like the BBMP, BWSSB, and all of them. And their agenda is what takes a first step. So obviously the need at that point of time, when the PNLIT was set up and that lake was rejuvenated, it was about a walking path, a jogging path, that kind of stuff. And then in the Puttanahali Lake, there is a small little patch of settlements there. They went through a lot of back and forth with the trust and with the government, because they were given land somewhere very far off near Electronic City, and those people did not want to move because their livelihoods were all around the place, and that battle is still ongoing. So when it comes to such kind of situations, these trusts will not advocate for the needs of those people, right? So typically when a trust is set up, or when lake protection committees are set up, now that the government has said that every lake has to have a lake protection committee, the lake protection committee should be representative of all the groups across the neighborhood. It has to be able to speak about the needs of the street vendors, the waste workers, the taxi drivers or auto rickshaw drivers, or whoever lives in and around that. Though their needs are not met at all, their voices are never heard. And many of the examples in Bangalore, they in fact changed the structure of the lake, because of all the contacts they had, they managed to get huge sums of CSR money So once the CSR money came, they rejuvenated the lake. When they rejuvenated the lake, the original structure of the lake got changed completely. They are no longer a shallow part in one region, deep in one region.
They become perennial.
Yeah, they become like soup bowls. They have water throughout the year. So for a lay person, oh, it looks nice and I can go walking, jogging around it. I can go nature walking with my children around it. But they don't realize that they've hit at the survival of so many other people who were dependent on that lake.
And does it have ecological repercussions as well?
That is something that needs to be studied, because when lakes are full like this and like a soup bowl structure, is that water even flowing from the upper lake to the lower lake? What has been the changes in the aquatic flora, fauna? What kind of animals and birds come there? These are things that remain to be studied. And given that in Bangalore we've already destroyed the Rajakaluve system and this entire lake network system, how such perennial soup bowls are even interfering in that entire lake ecology remains to be studied. So that is where the problem comes when private trusts come up and they want to, they are not ill-meaning. But if they don't understand the science of how lakes have to be rejuvenated, if they don't understand the law of how lakes have to be rejuvenated, and if they are not inclusive, then the whole purpose is defeated. We cannot be having lakes only for the recreational purpose of middle class people. It has to kind of help coexist. For example, we are talking about, we are at a time when unemployment is so high and we are continuously displacing people in rural areas of their lives and livelihoods, and all of them are coming into cities today. So we have to make way for different kinds of livelihoods to coexist, and lakes can have street vendors sitting outside, food trucks, but food trucks again with all kinds of rules and regulations in place of not using plastic, not dumping the waste there, all that has to be taken care of. But we have to kind of think of those kind of possibilities as well, and not just look at, I want a nice serene beautiful lake like how I'll see in the Midwest in the US. That is not the kind of lake we have here.
Yeah, but I also think that this is again very interesting, because I also think that different trustees must also be having their different stories across different lakes. And while some trustees maybe they are more, they kind of appreciate that participatory approach more. Maybe there are other trustees for whom that beautification and recreational activities are more important. So that this is also a bit how do I say, like multi-layered, more nuanced analysis of these different trustees preserving different lakes and their perspectives. I think it's not, we cannot actually paint them using one single stroke.
Correct. Yeah. So again, it depends on the neighborhood. So if again I can give you examples of what is happening in Bangalore. So there are lakes in Uttarahalli here, Subramanyapura Lake and the Uttarahalli Lake, where they have made way for all kinds of festivities. For example, when Diwali comes, they light lamps in the lake. Will they allow that when Christmas comes? Will they allow a Christmas tree come up there, or will they allow that during Ramzan or any other festival? So there is a religious thing to it, because it depends on the neighborhood where the lake is situated and the caste and class of people who dominate that region. And in a country where we are currently in such a major crisis, we have to be very conscious of this. So in this context, implementing the provisions of the 73rd and the 74th Amendment has to be like the bottom line of it, because at the end of the day a ward committee should be responsible for the lakes around it. Then you will have at least there is a provision that all voices can be heard. And also within the government there are challenges of how they want to even understand this or perceive this entire thing. Unfortunately, many people even within the various parastatal agencies have not even read the final court order, don't keep updated with what is happening in the court.
So
what do you think should be the greatest motivation for them to kind of how do you say to be very happy and gratified with this the involvement of the trustees in the management of lakes? What do you think should be the major motivation for this BBMP officials to?
It's their job. I think, they are in their positions because they are supposed to be serving the people.
Yeah, but they seem to be quite gratified with the involvement of these trustees in lake management.
For motivation with the various government sectors, I think it has to come from the government, and there also has to be some political will for it. You can't be financializing everything. The minute you financialize everything, that is when we lose out on it. If a lake is being privatized, or if it is being given, some part of it is being given to some big industry, then that is the beginning of the end of that lake. So that kind of a financialized model should stop, and political will has to be there. Yeah.